and welcome to the comprehensive news analysis of the Indian Express Delhi edition dated 14th June 2020. Let's look at the first article. Trump reschedules Tulsa campaign rally after uproar. This article is relevant for preliminary examination point of view. So, in the backdrop of this article, I would like to discuss about the Tulsa campaign or what is the Tulsa rally of 2020 that which Mr. Donald Trump, the president of US, has rescheduled out of respect for Juneteenth. If we see that President Donald Trump announced late Friday night that he is rescheduling a rally that was to be held on June 19. Juneteenth, the holiday commemorating the end of slavery in the United States. Out of respect for this holiday, Mr. Trump's decision to hold his first campaign rally in months of the holiday was met with widespread criticism amid the national outcry following George Floyd's death at the hands of police officers and nationwide protest about police brutality and racial inequality and racial discrimination. We had previously scheduled our MAGA rally in Tulsa, which is located in Oklahoma, for June 19th, Juneteenth, which was the statement of Mr. Trump. He tweeted, "Unfortunately, however, this would fall on the Juneteenth holiday." Coming to the next article, General Studies Paper 2 International Relations Dragon Invites Elephant to Dance. Here, Mr. P. Chidambaram draws reference to the Indo China skirmishes of 2020. So, with reference to his article, let's discuss 2020 Indo China border disputes. According to the standoff, India has moved an additional 12,000 more workers to the region to help in completing Indian infrastructure development. When we say about Pangong So Lake incidents, we look about the ongoing military standoff as well. Here, the writer of this article has drawn reference to the ongoing military standoff, which started since 5th May 2020. Chinese and Indian troops were reported to have engaged in non lethal aggressive action. Face offs and skirmishes at multiple locations along the Sino Indian border. Incidents have taken place near the Pangong So Lake in Ladakh and the Nathula Pass in Sikkim. In addition, face offs are ongoing at multiple locations in eastern Ladakh along the LAC line of actual control that has persisted from the 1962 Sino Indian War. Most recent of the articles is the Galwan River Valley. The writer is also making reference to Galwan River Valley as well, where the Chinese forces objected to Indian road construction within Indian territory. So, he also draws reference to the developments between India China skirmishes, like he's talking about the background, what led to this standoff, Doklam, the Pangong So incidents, the Galwan River Valley, the Sikkim incidents also. So, what he says, the spat began with the Chinese intruded into the Muguthang Valley and shouted to the Indian troops. Following the incident, the lieutenant involved, who was a third generation military recruit, was called back from the area. An Indian Army Eastern Command spokesman said that the matter was resolved after dialogue and interaction at the local level and that temporary and short duration face offs between border guarding troops do occur as boundaries are not resolved. Just move on to the next article. Organs of state have failed the marginalized. Now, here the article writer, Mr. Arun S., is making reference to the organs of state and the constitutional safeguards guaranteed to the scheduled castes and scheduled tribes of India. So, to develop this background of this article, let's talk about what are the constitutional safeguards or what are the fate of scheduled castes and scheduled tribes in India. When we say scheduled tribes and scheduled castes in India, they are a reserved category section. They are officially designated groups of people which fall into the constitution guaranteed section. The terms are recognized in the Constitution of India, and the groups are designated in one or another of the categories. For much of the period of the British rule in the Indian subcontinent, they were known as the depressed classes. Also, we know about the depressed classes association during pre-independence era. When we say about the reservation, we know about Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. He was the reformer and member of the Constitutional Assembly of India. Also, he led Dalit protests during independence struggle as well. He was himself a Dalit. The scheduled castes and scheduled tribes comprise about 16.6% and 8.6% respectively of India's population. This data is available according to the 2011 census. So we say since the independence of India, the scheduled castes and scheduled tribes were given reservation status guaranteeing political representation. The constitution lays down the general principles of positive discrimination for scheduled castes and scheduled tribes. Let's look at the government's initiative to improve the situation of scheduled castes and scheduled tribes. Government has adopted some strategies like protective arrangements. Such measures are required to enforce equality, to provide punitive measures for transgressions, and to eliminate established practices that perpetuate inequities. A number of laws were enacted to implement the provisions in the Constitution. Such examples includes Scheduled Caste and Scheduled Tribe Prevention of Atrocities Act of 1989. Also, we have the Untouchability Practices Act of 1955. We have the Employment of Manual Scavengers and Construction of Dry Latrines Prohibition Act of 1993. Despite legislation, what's fate is that social discrimination still continues against scheduled caste and scheduled tribes. Then you have affirmative action to provide positive treatment in allotment of jobs and access to higher education as a means to accelerate the integration of SCs and STs with the mainstream society so that they can be connected with the mainstream society. This was the principle of affirmative action. Then development to provide resources and to provide the benefits, to provide opportunities in public employment opportunities, to bridge the socio-economic gap which exists between the SCs and STs and other communities. Major part played by this Hidayatullah National Law University legislation to improve the socio-economic situation of SCs and STs because 27% of SC and 37% of ST households live below the poverty line. Mr. Arun S. is making reference to about the public procurement. The 4% share in the public procurement policy 2012 is actually a purchase preference policy and not an affirmative action. Just now we discussed about affirmative action. Now we have the national commissions to effectively implement the safeguards built into the constitution and other legislation. The constitution under Article 338A provides for two statutory commissions. What are they? National Commission for Scheduled Castes and National Commission for Scheduled Tribes. The chairpersons of both commissions sit ex officio on the National Human Rights Commission. So, when we say about the National Human Rights Commission, it is a statutory public body. It was constituted on 12th October 1993 under the Protection of Human Rights Ordinance of 28 September 1993. The goal of Stand Up India of 2016 was to include SC, ST and women and entrepreneurs. After 17 months of launch, an RTI filed by this newspaper revealed that the banking system had provided Stand Up India loans to 5,852 SC applicants and 1,761 ST and 33,321 general category women. This data was available. When we say about the concept of Mr. Dr. Ambedkar, what happened? Dr. Ambedkar sought reservation as he wanted SC STs to occupy the table when policies were made. So he is making reference to the fate of marginalized sections. He is also drawing the way forward, a beautiful conclusion. What he says, let's look. The marginalized have to establish their own think tanks that equip their representatives with hard data and analysis. Constitutional benefits are derived when society works for them. Caste is the real bane of India. Caste, please look at this matter. It was and it still remains. Let's strive to make India inclusive. It means we should work for social inclusion. Social inclusion must be promoted, and collectively we have to nurture a dream. We have to contribute thoroughly. This was the article with reference to General Studies, Paper 1, Social Issues. Now we have the next article with reference to Mr. Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, who was the father of our nation, and he says, the article writer says, holding Gandhi to sensibility of joy. He is drawing a reference to the recent George Floyd protests and to the George Floyd incident in the backdrop. He is comparing with the racial discrimination during the times of Gandhiji. So let's first clear about the detailed discussion of George Floyd. The killing of George Floyd, it took place on 25th May 2020. He was a black man. He was a 46-year-old footballer who was killed in Minneapolis, Minnesota during an arrest for allegedly during a counterfeit bill. This was a minor offense committed by George Floyd. So we know about what happened a white police officer was there, Derek Chauvin. He knelt on George Floyd's neck for more than 9 minutes, while Floyd was handcuffed and lying face down, begging for his life and repeatedly saying, "I can't breathe." These were his last words. A second and third police officer further restrained Floyd, while a fourth prevented bystanders from intervening. During the final 3 minutes, Floyd was motionless and had no pulse, while Chauvin ignored onlookers' pleas to remove his knee, which he did not do until medicals told him to. This was a case. We have to understand the matter. After videos were made circulated throughout the media, made by witnesses, and security's cameras became public, all four officers were fired the following day. Floyd's that triggered demonstrations and protests in more than 75 US cities, also just near the White House protests, also around the world, also against police brutality, police racism, and lack of police accountability. What happened in early June, Minneapolis City Council took action to ban chokeholds and require police officers to intervene against the use of excessive force by other officers, and voted an intent to replace the police department with a new community based system of public safety. If we talk about the arrest and what happened, that arrest took place on the evening of Memorial Day on 25th of May 2020. Floyd purchased cigarettes at Cup Foods, a grocery store at the intersection of East 30th Street and Chicago Avenue in the Powderhorn Park neighborhood of Minneapolis. Just before 8 p.m., two Cup Foods employees left the store and crossed the street to an sports utility vehicle parked in front of a restaurant. Floyd returned the cigarettes as he refused. The interaction was filmed by the restaurant security camera. At 8:01, a store employee called police to report that Floyd had passed fake bills and was awfully drunk and not in control of himself. And in this case, the incident took place. The George Floyd incident took place. Medical response and death came after that. Then we have this memorials and protests, also investigations and criminal charges were imposed. We have the criticism of neck restraints also. Minneapolis police officers have a record of administering neck restraints at least 237 times since the beginning of 2015. Now, here, the writer Mr. Meghnath Desai is making reference to racial discrimination during the times of Gandhiji. So, how we can hold Mr. Gandhi to sensibilities of today? How we can draw a reference at which is quite important to talk about that Mahatma Gandhi has been denounced by feminists, by those championing Dalit rights, accused of collaborating with the British, Very important to discuss here. We must know about what were his references, Black Lives Matter incident, how we can just connect the demonstrations. A lot of rage was expressed against racism and injustice faced by black and ethnic minorities across the world. The statue of Mahatma Gandhi was also pulled down. In London's Parliament Square, the Gandhi statue, unveiled in March 2015 by the late Arun Jaitley, suffered only slightly a slash of white paint and a racist written on its steps. Okay, this was the case. Those taking part in the Black Lives Matter movement are young. They are quite angry to protest against the racial injustice, the racial discrimination. If Gandhi would be alive, he must have joined them if he was here now. The injustice America's black community has suffered for the last 400 years is a shameful story. Despite the abolition of slavery in the 1860s and the civil rights legislation of the 1960s, the position of black Americans remains one of political and economic deprivation. Unlike in India, voting rights are not unconditionally universal. Even now, in many states where the Republicans have a majority, the legislators inventing new hurdles which make voting difficult for black voters. They depend on their place of residence, which is not justified. So this was the relevance of this article. We can turn to the next article. So important to discuss. This article was relevant for general studies, paper, and social issues. Important to talk about. So when we say about something with reference to environment and ecology, we talk about what benefit or what humans have interfered in their natural process. So here what have taken place? Decline in recommendations for diversion of forest land. This article is relevant for general studies paper 3 mains, environment and ecology. How? We can discuss this article here. You can understand this article. What has happened here? State-wise statistics reveal that out of 24 states that had given recommendations in 2019, only 10 states accounted for 82.49% of total forest land recommended for diversion of non-forestry purposes in 2019, amounting to the diversion of 11 lakh 265 11,265.3 hectares of forest land. A survey was conducted by an environmental law firm. It has found a steady decline in recommendations for the diversion of forest land for various projects over the past 3 years. Forest land is usually recommended for diversion by state governments for the development of various infrastructure projects or mining, and then given a final approval by the Union Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change after having received clearance from the Ministry's Forest Advisory Committee or maybe 10 regional empowered committees as applicable. What has happened? According to the study carried out by the Legal Initiative for Forest and Environment as a part of a series looking at the clearances made by the MOEF, which was released in March, a total of 27,801.07 hectares of forest land was recommended for diversion for non-forestry uses such as mining, such as roads, such as railways, hydel, infrastructure between January and December 2017. So, if we talk about the forest lands of India, the distribution of forest land of India, we generally talk about what is the area granted in the various states, what protection laws are available, what protection laws are available. Very important to discuss here. We must know about India's forest cover is rising, but northeast and tribal areas are losing. We know about the ISFR, it is the India State of Forest Report 2019. It was released by MOEF, Ministry of Environment and Forests and Climate Change. It revealed that total forest and tree cover of the country is 807,276 square kilometers. You must know about this survey, that is ISFR, India State of Forest Report 2019. Nearly 25% of India's total land area is now under forest and tree cover. However, there is a still long way to go, more than a decade, admits the government. When we talk about the overall forest and tree cover, which is marked by an increase on a national level, the report has highlighted a decrease in the forest area in the country's northeast region. Here, we are talking about the ISFR survey, India State Forest Report Survey of 2019. This decline in forest area in the northeast has been an ongoing trend, with the region witnessing a decline, a loss of about 3,199 square kilometer of forest area. ISFR 2019 is a biennial report which is published by the Forest Survey of India FSI and is the 16th such report published. The calculations are largely based on satellite data. It includes information on forest cover, tree cover, mangrove cover, growing stock inside and outside the forest areas, carbon stock in India's forests, forest type as well. You have the biodiversity as well. You have forest fire monitoring and forest cover in the different slopes and altitudes. What does forest cover include? According to this report, the total forest cover of the country is 712,249 square kilometers. As per the report, forest cover includes all tree patches which have canopy density more than 10% and area of 1 hectare or more in size, irrespective of their legal status and species composition. The term recorded forest area is used for lands which have been notified as forest under any government act or rules as recorded as forest in the government record. This was what we have to discuss with reference to this article. Then we can move on to this next article. According to ICMR, we have revised treatment protocol for COVID-19. India's revised treatment protocol for COVID-19 includes remdesivir. Please note, remdesivir is a very valuable drug which was suggested by great scientist Mrs. Aruna Subramanian to treatment of COVID-19. Also, many other countries have also took into account. This article is relevant for General Studies Paper 3, Science and Technology. So, remdesivir and what is the revised treatment protocol of India for COVID-19, we must understand, and how the situation is going to turn and what kind of arrangements have been made by Ministry of Health to issue revised clinical management protocols. How we can manage rise in cases. As we say, it has recommended an off-label application of tocilizumab. It is a drug that modifies the immune system or its functioning, and convalescent plasma. We know about CPT, the convalescent plasma therapy for treating coronavirus infected patients in moderate stage of the illness. Also, we have many stages of illness as well. Besides, you have to see adding loss of smell or taste to the list of COVID 19 symptoms. In its revised clinical management protocols for COVID 19, the Union Health Ministry, in a turnaround, has its addition and has also advised the use of hydroxychloroquine. It has also advised the use of hydroxychloroquine in the early course of the disease while dropping the use of azithromycin in combination with hydroxychloroquine HCQ in dealing with the severe COVID 19 cases with those require the intensive care unit ICU management. What we have observed that hydroxychloroquine has demonstrated in vitro activity against SARS-CoV-2, severe acute respiratory syndrome coronavirus strain 2, and was shown to be clinically beneficial in several small single-center studies, though with significant limitations, the health ministry has stated. If we talk about the observational studies, what we have made, methodological limitations have been taken into cognizance, like mortality rate and clinically meaningful outcomes have been generated. What we have observed also, evidence base behind this use remains limited. We must know about remdesivir. Remdesivir is an antiviral. Remdesivir is an antiviral that was originally developed in 2014 by California pharma company Gilead Sciences. It was used for the treatment of Ebola in 2014. And let's look at the next article discussing about the disengagement process relevant for general studies paper 2 international relations, talking about the 2020 India China skirmishes. What Mr. M. Naravane has stated, he is the chief of army, has stated the process situation is normal now, we can proceed ahead. But we have to talk about that situation along our borders with China is under control. This is a statement given by Mr. M. Naravani. He has also said that through the continued dialogue, peace has been established. It is hoped that all perceived differences or any kinds of disputes which has arisen between India and China will be set to rest. So let's look into this matter. The situation along India's borders with China is under control. We are also hopeful that through the continued dialogue we are having, all the perceived differences that we, China and India will be set to rest. Talking about the situation in Jammu and Kashmir, Mr. Naravane has stated that last 15 days alone we have seen 15 terrorists have been killed. Please note, 15 terrorists have been killed in the last 15 days. Most of the operations have been based on information provided by the locals themselves, which goes to show that they are also absolutely fed up with militancy and terrorism and they want that the situation should return to normal. This was the statement of Army Chief M. Naravani. This comes a day after Indian and Chinese army delegations, led by Major General rank officers, on Friday held discussions in eastern Ladakh again to resolve the standoff between border troops. This was the fifth round of meeting. So Friday's meetings revealed about Major General Abhijit Bapat that what were the measures taken to counterpart China's attack and troops. Also, Defense Minister Mr. Rajnath Singh also reviewed India's military preparedness in eastern Ladakh. So this was all about what you can understand with reference to this article, which was about 2020 India-China skirmishes of border disputes. We have to look into the next article, the last one, relevant for general studies paper 2 international relations, talking about India and Nepal. Now we know about that Nepal has developed a new map and it has also officially recognized this map. Nepal has passed amendment on the new map. What consequence it can have on the Indo-Nepal relations, or what impact will it will leave on India's relations with Nepal, that we have to separate, understand about that unanimous vote by Pratinidhi Sabha was taken place, and it was legal stamp which was the inclusion of Indian territory. Border trouble has also taken place. If we look at this map, what we see here, Kala Pani is located here, and we have the Limpiadhura and Nipo Lake Pass. So we have this located border activities. What we see that the lower house of Nepal's parliament on Saturday, yesterday only, unanimously passed the historic second constitutional amendment bill guaranteeing legal status for the updated political map of Nepal, which includes India's territories in Uttarakhand's Pithoradgarh district. This is Uttarakhand Pithoradgarh district. If you look at this map, you must understand the context of the situation responding to the developments. We say Indian Ministry of External Affairs MEA has said it had noted the legislative process. The artificial enlargement of claims is not based on historical fact or evidence and is not tenable. It is also violative of our current understanding to hold talks on outstanding boundary issues. The territorial dispute stems from the fact that Nepal claims the land to the east of river Kali, which forms the country's western border. As per Kathmandu's understanding, the river originates from Limpia in the higher Himalayas, giving it access to a triangular shaped land defined by Limpia Lipu Lake, and Kala Pani. India opposes the notion and says the origin, it talks about the origin, we discuss about the origin. Very important to discuss the origin. We say about the origin, we talk about the Kala Pani, and river is much further down, which reduces Nepal's territorial demand. We also saw yesterday that through voice note, the members of the Pratinidhi Sabha in Nepal, individual signatures were required for the passing of the bill which completed the voting process. The voting showed that members from all the political parties of the Pratinidhi Sabha voted in favor of the motion moved by the government of Prime Minister Mr. KP Sharma Oli. So let's wait and watch what happens next and what impact is going to happen after the amendment of the new map. We also have taken into account the House of Representatives of the Nepal. So this was all about discussion of the Indian Express articles, Delhi edition of 14th June 2020. So we discussed just now about the Indo-Nepal and how Nepal has passed the amendment for the new political map. Then we have talked about the India-China 2020 border skirmishes, and now the situation is under control according to the Army Chief Mr. General M.M. Naravane. Coming to the next, we have the revised treatment protocol for COVID-19, which includes remdesivir as a drug, and it has also emphasized on the use of the HCQ, hydroxychloroquine, relevant for general studies, paper 3, science and technology. Next, we have this forest cover, forest land, relevant for ecology and environment. Then you have the social issues article talking about the racism, the racial discrimination, the George Floyd protest, the George Floyd incident, and how it is comparable, how it is in the context is linked with the racial injustice during the times of Mahatma Gandhi. Then we have this organs of state relevant for general studies, paper 1, social issues, that talks about the constitutional safeguards guaranteed to scheduled castes and scheduled tribes, and we looked into the matter, what is the backdrop, what is the context, what is the background, what is the situation of the scheduled castes and scheduled tribes fate in India. Then we have the Indo-China relations, talking about the dragon invites elephant to dance, as noted by Mr. P. Chidambaram, the former Union Minister, Gender 2, paper 2, international relations. That was article was relevant for that category. Now here we have this RIMS paper special from Richard Rose Pulsar campaign. This was all about the articles relevant for UPSC CS examination. Thank you.